Donald Trump then comes out. And Donald Trump, a common citizen, he takes his own money, pays for newspaper space in New York City's main newspapers. And he calls for the reinstatement of the death penalty specifically for the Central Park jogger case. There were other folks who were chiming in, and they were saying things like, you know, if we took the eldest one of them, Corey Wise, and we hung him from a tree in Central Park, and if we took the others and we horsewhipped them, maybe our park would be safe again. This is what, you know, like, this whole process that they put us through was so amazing that when I tell young people about it today, and my mentor, of course, is definitely Malcolm X. But when I say Nelson Mandela, because people always ask me, they say, well, you know, had I not known you was in prison, I would have never known. Like your demeanor, your presence, the way that you carry yourself. I've seen people who come home from prison, you don't even look like that. And I said, well, you know, Mandiba used to say, to be angry, to be bitter, is like drinking poison and expecting your enemies to die. They don't care what they do to you and how they do it. They're like, man, I mean, I'm sure Donald Trump is sleeping on his plush king-size, you know, custom-made beds with the pillowcases and all of that stuff that has 8,000 thread counts. I'm sure, you know, somebody wrote in one of the papers, they said when they found out that we were innocent, you would hope and wonder that we would have received some sort of apology. And they said this thing about apologizing was the dust for one of his maids to sweep up. The only apology, people always ask me, they say, have you ever received an apology? And the only apology that we have ever received, the only apology we have ever received was from one of the courtroom artists that used to draw us. You know, we went run over by a few different trains, and we looking, we see some light, some trains and some cars that run us over, and we think that this is the justice coming. You know. So with that, like the slave ships when they sail, but they don't know. My people was made to go. My people's all safe tell. My people got more people for them. More people, more sisters and brothers. My people stay strong and high. My people will never fail. My people will always remain with a story to tell. My people was made to adore.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I always cherish that lesson that he learned about being bitter. And he has every cause to be bitter, but that kills the soul. It sort of buries your spirit when you hate like that. And Donald Trump is giving us all cause to hate because he's demonic himself. And he's feeding off of hate. He loves it when he upsets us, and it's like feeding ourselves poison to be bitter and angry at this demon. All right? So we have to elevate our spirits. And this too shall pass. All right? There's from a brother that spent how many years in prison? And he says being bitter and hateful is like taking poison, expecting your enemy to die. All right? So let's take a lesson from a brother that's really been through the pain. As it is now, what's the state of Black America, my brother? Trying to pick up on that lesson with the demon in the White House. Brother Leroy?
Last week, I made mention that one of the conditions of black people in America is one of denial.
Okay.
We're not assessing what is in front of us. And that particular clip you played with Brother Yusuf is in direct relationship to the statement that President Trump made before Kavanaugh was pushed through. And that is...
This is from the 80s. 89, matter of fact.
What I'm saying is that statement there, in 89, is in direct relationship to the statement made by President Trump that, quote, "We're living in a dangerous time when young men can feel endangered by being accused of a crime without the benefit of a trial." I'm
right.
Paraphrasing what he said, but those individuals who are looking at this program can reflect on that. He said that, but he was talking about white boys.
Right.
Okay? And this point about no apology. See, when someone gives you an apology, there is room now for dialogue, there's hope for a better time, etc.
Yeah.
They're not giving no apologies. Kavanaugh is in, and you can look at this guy, man. Please do not have a case going before this guy. So
he's angry. He's shown us his anger.
I brought a copy of the 1968 copy of Muhammad Speaks. It says, "Justice for the Black Man."
1968.
1968, Justice for the Black Man. And the conclusion he reaches is what Minister Farrakhan is talking about today and has been talking about for the past couple of decades, is that separation is a must. And black people will say, well, how can we separate? Where are we going to go? The thing is, you have to separate in your mind and be not victims, mental victims of these people. When we talk of the Trumps and the injustices that are done continually to black people, we have to take that energy and turn it around into what we can do. Because when we look at this thing, what's going on in Washington, D.C., Democrats can't be as dumb as they appear. All right? I'm using that. I'm not going to use, hey, they don't have a program. They cannot be as dumb. And I think Malcolm had this statement that they're wings on the same bird or something like that, breasts on the same body. And black people have to look at these situations that we're dealing with as further proof that we have to look to ourselves and put God out front, not no mystical God, the God in us.
What about the fact that the injustice shown to a white woman on public television? I mean, this is just they just dogged that poor woman.
The doctor.
Dr. Ford.
Yeah.
They dogged her.
Right.
On prime time, Trump and his hoods. This is not America.
But we saw this before. I mean, we saw this in 1991 with
That was no
Hill.
comparison. That's no comparison.
Well, you know,
Clarence Thomas, no comparison.
I don't
We're
know.
talking about a black man and a white man.
Yeah,
Come
well,
on. Don't even,
But you have to remember who Clarence Thomas is. You know, he is just there. You know,
right.
he is a white man for all practical purposes.
He's an Uncle Tom.
Well, I mean, and therefore, you know, under those particular circumstances, I mean, as you see it, he was treated in a particular way. But again, when he talked about, you
But
know,
that
this
was
was
by
a
a black woman.
technological lynching, when he went ahead and used that particular term in the way that he did, it made the rest of the white folks, they had to back up. But here in this particular situation, of course, as we saw, you know, white people essentially fighting amongst themselves.
But what I'm talking about between Clarence Thomas, it was a black man talking dirty to a black woman. If she had been white, it could have been a completely different story. We're talking about Dr. Ford talking about her being attempted rape at 15 years old. You could see the pain in her face. Everybody could see she was telling the truth. She said she was 100% sure that it was Kavanaugh,
But
right? Now,
when
Collins,
people deal with frat boys, when they become frat boys, I mean, this is just the regular frat boy behavior that these white people
We
of a
all know
particular
that.
class have.
But he should have came out and said, I was 17 at the time, and I was acting up.
Yeah,
I
when he-
reformed since
When
then.
he attempted to come off as a choir boy, as he did in his first presentation, it's very, very clear that he was lying. He was lying about everything. He was lying about some of the terminology that was in his yearbook
That was
when
so
they talked about
obvious.
woofing and Devil's Triangle and
Well,
a number
how
of other things. He was lying.
How
Obviously, he
can
was lying.
anybody get away with telling that many lies?
But-
Such as Trump.
But when
Trump
you're
lies
dealing,
every other second.
but when you're dealing with a politicized situation like this, the Republicans just wanted to go ahead and have their choice for a Supreme Court confirmed. They didn't care how they did it. They didn't care what they had to do in regards to going ahead and doing it. That's what they did.
But you think America's going to put up with this injustice?
I think America, they are America. The Republican Party and those white folks who were in the Judiciary Committee, they are America.
This is white on white crime. Somebody's got to pay for the evil.
Well, we have to see. I don't know if I have much faith in white people. You have to remember, 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump to begin with. The majority of white men,
because
I don't
black
know the
people
figures.
didn't vote. That's how we got Donald
That's
Trump.
not, we
Come
can't
on.
blame
Come
us.
on.
I'm not going to take
They
the
were
blame for
mad
that.
about Bernie.
Look, we weren't mad about
Some
Bernie.
of my best friends
We weren't that
didn't
mad about
vote for
Bernie.
Hillary.
They
All
didn't-
right?
Hillary was a bad candidate, but despite that,
Bad.
over
What was worse?
90% of black people went ahead and voted for Hillary Clinton anyway.
Well,
you
then-
can't blame us. It's white people. This is at the feet of white people. And the only change that's going to take place in regards to this electoral system is going to be if some of these radical white people, radical white feminists, go ahead and attempt to try to change the minds of their fathers and brothers and uncles and nieces and nephews and daughters. That's the only way that
That's
there's going to be
happening.
any kind of a... No.
That's happening.
It's not happening. It's
November
not,
6th.
Look, what's happening now is we see that some of these particular people are upset. But now, are they doing
Aren't you
the
upset?
organizing?
Aren't you upset?
I don't know if I'm upset. I don't know if upset is the proper word. And the reason I say I don't know if I'm upset at our people. That's what I'm upset at. Because at this particular point, we have work that we have to do
That's right.
as a people, and we're
Right.
not doing that work.
And
That
one
work
of-
is totally separate and
one
apart
of the-
from what takes place in the white community.
One of the works that we have to do is get out and vote November 6th. We
Well-
have a dog in this fight. I don't want to hear that we don't have a
May I
dog
say
in the
this?
fight.
What is not talked about for the past 1, 2, 3, 4 elections, I'm going back to Bush, those elections were stolen.
Yeah.
They were
obviously.
stolen
All right.
by way of disenfranchising
That's
black
right.
people
That's
from the
right.
voter list,
That's right.
Florida, Ohio,
Right.
and it continued what they call voter suppression. It continued with this guy being elected.
Right.
So when they talk about the percent, when they talk about percent white women, percent who voted for it, those are the ones of the group that voted, were allowed to vote in these United States of America. So the proper context is looking at everything. When we become upset, and quote, upset means, to me, that we are
Right.
alive some kind of way, mentally awake.
Yeah.
But the actions that we have to take is not commensurate with how great a people we are.
All right. Okay.
We're great people. Look, we're the driving force of many of the industries in America, including the aerospace industry. But
Okay.
those images of black inventors and black innovators and technological leaders is kept away from us. Actually, the people who are at the forefront of these things, I'm talking about the black people, should make themselves available to black media. And I'm
Yeah.
saying from the standpoint of black professionals have a thing about whatever's in their mind, they just don't come out and promote one another. So we have to stumble on to hidden figures and
Yeah.
by accident. The woman down in Arkansas, her name is Ray Montague, by accident. And the woman who developed the technology for Skype and what they call it, blackjack and whatnot, her name is Marion Kroc. This is a black woman who has so many patents. But I'm saying that we're great people. The issues of the 60s, and that is the thrust of black people in the 60s, has created a platform for the so-called LGB, EFG
Of course.
group, etc. They didn't do nothing. They weren't involved in anything. The white women movement and all this other feminist movement, and that movement was developed in order to counteract blacks getting into affirmative action.
Okay.
That's what the feminist movement was and is about. But I'm saying this, that we have to begin to look at what we can do. Our children are still failing in these schools in New York City. Just take it in New York City. Whatever borough you go to, our children are failing. They're intentionally being failed. And Bashir can talk about that better than Brother Leroy, being right on top of that thing for the years that you've been. What do? We have to educate our own children.
Oh, true.
They may still go to a public school, but we got to open up Saturday schools, Sunday morning, what they call Bible study. We have to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic within the Bible class that we teach our children. We have to use every means. Our children are extremely bright.
Okay.
Extremely bright. But they're going to hell in these schools.
Yeah.
And last
Yeah.
but not least, the charter schools, ladies and gentlemen, is making your child obedient to them. The structure that they have within these charter schools is making them obedient. We call them OBSEs, obedient slaves of the empire. You've got to get your own independent schools going. Even if it's on the weekend, they go to public school, but you got to change the atmosphere within our communities, and it has to happen quick. Trump and the thing with Kavanaugh goes back to Reagan. Let's talk about the context. The civil rights movement begot the legislation that Lyndon Baines Johnson pushed through, all right? The individuals in this country at that time, equivalent to those individuals who did not want to see black people free after the Civil War, went into action and began to push for a rollback. And it's taken them this long to get the Supreme Court in the position that they have it now. But it's part of an ongoing campaign to push black people back. And we ain't take their jobs. In fact, we made their industries more efficient, more creative, and better.
I tend to think this whole Supreme Court thievery they've got to pay.
But look,
They've got to pay.
I mean, we have to go back in history and look at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has never been a group of impartial jurists. They've always been political, and for the most part, they've always ruled against our people. We can go back to Dred Scott, 1854. We can go back to Plessy versus Ferguson. We can go back to all of these rulings that the Supreme Court made. The Supreme Court, as a matter of fact, has ruled in regards to the question, who is a white person? There are two cases at least. The Ozawa case, which is, I think it's about 1922, 1923, and then there's another case, the Thin case, where a Japanese man and an East Indian man went to the Supreme Court so that they would be able to be considered white people. So we have to understand, and in each instance, the Supreme Court determined that they could not be white. One was scientific in regards to their findings, saying, no, you are genetically not white. And then the other one was, well, you are only white when the common white man says you're white.
Well, I see the only possibility for change is for the Democrats to take over the House and the Senate.
The only reason I'm laughing.
I still have hope. I
The
laugh
only
when
reason
Trump
I'm
won
laughing is
because of the fact that we didn't get out there and vote.
But listen.
But no,
vote for the Democrats have to learn how to fight. They have to learn how to fight.
No, we have to.
They don't fight.
But we have to remember what Putin and Trump did together as a team. Come to find out the Israelis were involved also. Putin didn't like Hillary Clinton from 2012. He didn't want to see a woman in there. Trump is Putin's B. True? B, you know what I mean by B. All right? Now, he showed that in Helsinki. Everybody saw that. The world saw that.
Well, listen,
Putin is running the show here in America. Why are the Republicans putting up with that? Reagan is turning over in his grave to see the Russians come here and rule our country and put a puppet like Trump in there.
well,
Why aren't we fighting against that?
he is not.
Why aren't the Republicans fighting against that?
That's because he represents white supremacy. And
Well,
at this
there you
particular
go.
point, we have
Okay.
white supremacists
Okay.
who are literally in
understand that.
charge of the United States.
Well, when is-
now, that's whether we talk about Putin or
Okay.
whether we talk about anybody else.
All
The
right.
fact of the matter is, at this particular point, we have a white supremacist administration,
There
and
you
the
go.
Democrats,
Amen.
the Negroes who happen to be elected officials, they are not fighting in a way that they should be fighting. I'll just say that. All right?
That's the point I
Congressional
wanted to
Black-
bring up.
The Congressional Black Caucus. I mean, Trump will meet with Kanye West, but refuses to meet with the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, what are they saying about
Is
this?
Kanye West a black man?
What are they saying about this?
I mean, you,
What are they
you
saying
consider
about
Kanye
this?
West a black man?
Well, we can say, at least phenotypically, I mean, he goes ahead and looks like one or whatever, But the fact of the matter is that the Democrats are not fighting.
Yes, they are.
Not really.
Come on.
Listen,
Yeah.
some people say, when the Republicans go ahead and come to a fight, they bring
That's
a knife
why-
and a gun.
that's why we got Trump.
And the Democrats go ahead and, they'll bring some notes or whatever else it is. And that's about the
We are
size
the
of it.
Democrats, man. We run the Democratic Party.
We don't run the Democratic Party.
Yes, we do.
We do not.
Our vote.
Just look in terms
Our
of the
vote
DNC and the
determines
mealy-mouthed person who happens
we
to hit
should run-
Perez,
we
who happens
should
to
run
be
the
the head of the
Democratic
DNC. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well,
I mean,
think
it's
Obama,
ridiculous.
Are you happy with the job Obama did?
No, I can't be. I can't be because some of
He
the
did
things
the
that
best
happened.
he could.
He did the best that he could, and again, he regrets some of the things because one of the
Like what?
things which we have to pay for in regards to Africa is the fact that when Libya was overthrown, Africa is paying the price for that now. Mali, all over the north. I mean, there have been incursions in regards to, we look at the north of Nigeria. We look at, incursions into Ghana. Now,
So
this is
if
all
Gaddafi
in
was still
regards.
in power, that
There would
wouldn't
have been a
happened.
stability. No, there would have been a stability because much of what is taking place now, the weapons have come from Libya, and in many instances, many of the people who are at this particular point attempting to try to attain power in Libya are responsible for these particular activities all over the northern part of Africa and part of the West as well. So, I mean, this has
Okay.
been, it's been horrific.
Was Gaddafi killing his own people? That's a lie, too?
Look,
That is a lie.
That is a lie?
That is a lie. When I listen to Gary Knoll, Gary Knoll is the only voice in New York that's been speaking out in terms of bringing the truth of what happened in Libya, bringing the truth of what happened in Libya. He was that was a pretense. That was the same thing that we lived through in the Congo. When Lumumba was the president and planned to do an independent thing, they said that the nuns, the white nuns in some part of the Congo was being threatened by his troops. They always come up with something. In terms of going into Iraq the first time, when Schwarzkopf was the general there, they had the girl come on TV and say that she saw babies being taken out of the incubators and thrown on the floor, and that was a total lie. That was the same kind of lie they tell when they tell us that the buildings at the Trade Center came down by way of the fuel from airplanes. They always have some kind of lie that they keep repeating over and over again. I want to say this in terms of your point about Trump and how dangerous the times are in America, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We got an indicator last week when the great nephew of Hitler came out and said, "Hey, I'm here in Long Island, but I ain't down with Trump." Why
What?
would someone in Hitler's family feel so safe to come out and let it be known that they exist in Long Island and have been there for years and heralded by their neighbors as being nice people who gave them chocolate chip cookies and cocoa on the weekend, etc.? How would he feel so safe, man?
No, because there's a town out in Long Island that they had Nazi rallies in the 20s and 30s.
Exactly.
And they have German-built homes out there in Long
Finance,
Island.
finance by, I think I get over here anyway.
By the Klan.
Look,
Underwritten. I'm saying that.
Well, I think
You have to remember-
Bashir made it
man.
very plain. This is the year of white supremacy. White supremacy.
Year? Y-E-A-R.
This
the last 400 years.
This is what we have to change.
The last 400 years.
Agreed.
1619.
Understanding
to
white supremacy is our
2019.
goal here. All right, you know what I'm going to do?
1619, 2019, next year will be the 400th anniversary of African people's
So when
presence
are we going to stop
in the
fighting
13
amongst
colonies.
ourselves?
Well, that's a major question.
Start
brother.
with this
All right.
program.
Unity.
All
Put
right.
the message out.
Let's start with a little unity on melanin. I don't think Bashir has seen this one. Play the piece on melanin. Let me show you the importance of being black here on planet Earth.
I'll be black.
Melanin is a neurochemical that is produced in part through the pituitary and the pineal gland. They both play a central role in the production of melanin, which is ultimately responsible for the color that we have in our skin. Now, historically, it had always been thought that melanin played a significant role in the intellectual propensity of African people. For example, when you study some of the Greek writings on melanin or the color of Africans, many of the Greek philosophers believed that that melanin played some sort of a role in how Africans had been able to create and develop some of the sciences that they had come to be known for. So melanin was always considered an intellectual sort of a chemical.
The pineal gland, which produces melanin, it's shaped like a pine cone. And the origin of the word pineal literally means resembling a pine cone. Now, in ancient symbolisms, the pine cone has always been represented because people knew the importance of the pineal gland as it related to melanin and the universe.
Melanin is a molecule, and the concept of melanin is it is black in its nature, and we find it in the cosmos, we find it in the heavens, we find it in water, we find it in land, we find it in everything that exists.
The sperm of the male and the egg of the woman, they're both layered with melanin, so that when the sperm penetrates the egg, there is a melanin explosion. And that melanin helps to formulate the fetus within that egg. And that fetus is literally coated with the melanin substance. And that melanin substance then goes on to form the brain and the central nervous system. So every human being begins with a melanin explosion.
Melanin is an intelligence. It's an intelligence because it is the dynamic, the primary dynamic in every part of the cell. It's a primary dynamic in the core of the human being as well as to the surface of the human being. Its intelligence is responsible for the forming of the nervous system. Every part of the nervous system has these little black dots all through it, which essentially carry information.
All right, there we have intellectual stimulus of how powerful we are. So why aren't we building our nation behind this genius that we have built in our system? And not recognizing that we have to get away from the bitterness. It's like taking poison, huh?
Yes.
And hating and all this other stuff, the bitterness. Let's move on.
Yes.
We know white supremacy is dominant in this day and time because we got the poster child in the White House. All right?
I mean, the first thing is, you know, we have to recognize who we are.
Okay.
And this is
That-
a
through the melanin.
serious problem. Whether it's through the melanin or in terms of the idea that we as a people have to begin to be able to function together on a level of unity which initially need only be functional and operational. Okay? I believe that, you know, part of the problem that we have is a spiritual problem. I mean, that's part of the reason why, you know, we cannot unite, and it's been difficult for us to unite for some time. But aside from that, I mean, they're very practical issues. I mean, one, our people are materialists. They have been sold into materialism to the extent.
That's not our nature, is it?
It's not our nature, but it's something that in this particular society, which is a materialist society, many of our people have been seduced by materialism. Let me give you a quick example. You go in people's homes and you can see a 50-inch television, but you can't see a single book. Okay? No books. What does that indicate to children? It indicates that your value is for the 50-inch television and not for books and learning. One of the things I used to do in terms of teaching adults who had children is I said, make sure in your home you have books that people can see. In your living room as a student, don't go ahead and hide your books in the bedroom somewhere. When you do your homework with your children. Read to your children. Make your children understand that there is not only a need, but you have a value for books and learning. You know, the idea that people to this day still say, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book.
Amen.
We still say that. And why is that? Because
it's true.
Because our children are now being seduced by technology, are moving away once again from literacy and books and the information that's contained in books.
Well, computers are made so that you can get a book and have it read to you.
But that's not what our children are using technology for.
They doing
video games,
That's what
listening to music. Yeah.
They moving heads and stuff around.
Now, the children have the basis for doing great things in terms of technology. You remember even when VCRs came about and people say, I can't program my VCR. Let me get one of my children to program the VCR. The same is true in terms of computers and other forms of technology.
Well, we know this is all the brainwashing of the white supremacists.
No question.
Okay?
No question.
Now, we as elders, how do we turn that around?
Well, we know historically, traditionally, that our community had great respect for elders. In this society, there is no respect for elders.
Right.
We have to see how white people treat their elders.
Right.
They put them in homes. They discard them.
Right.
They have no use for older people. We see this in terms of employment, where sometimes if you're 40 or 50, you're considered old and may not be able to be employed. All right? So in this society, unfortunately, we have taken on too many of the aspects of what Europeans do. And that's one of the things they do. They don't have any kind of respect for their elders. Even back, we can go back 50, 60 years ago in the projects. We had great respect for our elders.
Right.
Where is that
Absolutely. Now? It's gone. And it's gone because our young people have been seduced by materialism, by technology to an extent. And, you know, we have to see how we can go ahead and address some of these particular issues.
The condition of black people in America is properly assessed from 360 degrees, meaning a round table and the disciplines, the various disciplines offering insight. One thing, what happened to our elders, what happened to our family structure, we have been under attack. There has been a war waged on black people, covert and overt. Reagan and Colonel North were bringing in drugs.
Oh, that's the crack era.
Okay?
The 80s.
The crack.
Yeah.
What was happening in New York? The police had a crew, had crews of black youth Remember Larry Davis?
Right.
Pushing drugs in the black community. And Larry Davis revealed that. He turned coat on them, and that's why they sent out a hit team on Larry Davis, and he resisted.
That's my beef with black people. Let me inject this. You know, the super drug dealers who made all the money, the big images of today, all these rappers are ex-drug dealers, and they were killing our people.
Well, not all the...
they were the agents for the white supremacists.
They claim, some of them claim to be drug dealers, and they weren't. They claimed to be tough, and they weren't.
Yeah.
Some definitely were, but they are allowed to exist.
Puffy
There's
Cohen.
a
he a drug dealer?
There's a movie, huh?
Puffy Cohen, was he a drug dealer?
No,
He was never a drug dealer.
Puffy-
Oh, his father was a drug dealer.
No, he's a fake gangster and a wannabe thug or whatever in regards to that.
I mean, and play tough, man. If you ain't did 2,000 push-ups, play tough, and get guys who have done 2,000 push-ups to be in your entourage. The drug epidemic in the black community was allowed to exist, and there's a movie called The Prince of the City. Prince of the City, which when you get the DVD, the movie is so long they are 2 DVDs, and when you look at it, when they're doing the investigation, there is a statement that the cop that they turned is saying. He said, "You guys allow us to run free in the inner city so that you'll be protected." He said something to that effect. But that's the philosophy. How could you, just to digress, not digress, but insert this. How could you have, when you always hear about the police department being a dangerous zone when Caucasian police are talking. How could, if it was so dangerous, why would you have a grandfather who was a policeman, the father who was a policeman, and now his son is on the police force, and they all work in the black community? How do you have that? Except that they are extracting dollars out of the black community that you and I don't know about. And when we do, this is Sonny Carson said, he said, "Look, man," and I didn't understand that. I'm interviewing the brother. He said, "Look," he said, "when it's time to pay their mortgages, the arrests go up." I said, "Well, how is that related?" He said, "You don't understand." He said, "It's overtime."
You know what it's called? Collars for dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you talk about what's happened to the black community, you have to look at the various angles.
How do we change it?
We change it, okay. Bashir made mention of a couple of things. One, the spiritual aspect has to be reinforced and reintroduced into the black community.
We try that here every week.
No. There's so many blacks out there who claim to be Christian and don't go to no church.
Yeah, Muslim too.
I know that
How
for a
about
fact.
Muslim too?
No,
I
don't know
put the
about
Muslims
that.
in there.
Well, the Muslims go on you can carry a beef with the Muslims on another level or in another category.
I've got to beef with
The
Malcolm.
one being, well,
That's my beef with Muslims.
the
is
Nation
Malcolm.
of Islam is out there in the community.
Yeah.
Anybody else, I don't know what they're doing.
Sharpton.
And I'm not.
Sharpton's a Christian.
No, I'm dealing with Muslims now. I'm dealing with Muslims. Okay? What else are you doing? There's an existence in the black community today because Muslims who were active before 75 have not been active in the black community since that time.
Ah, yeah, there you go. That's
Okay?
true.
That is something that we
That's
talk
true.
about within the Nation of Islam and that we talk about, period. The Muslims have the knowledge to teach and to command respectfully among our youth, and it's not happening.
Listen, we've got, I have to just interject in terms of, in Brooklyn we have Masjid Al-Taqwa. We have Imam Siraj Wahaj, and he's been, and that particular community is in our community and doing work in our community on a regular basis.
Okay.
So I don't think it's
We just don't hear much
blanket.
about it.
No, we're not out there.
And you know, they've had you know, lots of grief in regards to being under surveillance all the time. You know, being you know, painted as being, quote, terrorists or having relationships with terrorists.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a camera outside of Masjid al-Taqwa on a regular basis, just like there's a camera outside.
You're going right. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, he said, the mosque, this is back in 66 when I came in, when I heard the mosque is filled with agents and hypocrites. I said,
Even
then
today.
I ain't got to be looking over my
Even
shoulder.
today.
Yeah. Why? Because the promotion, whether you are with Siraj or anybody that comes out of the Nation of Islam, and you in the so-called Sunni or Orthodox Muslim community, each one of us know the teachings of who is the original man. You may call it melanin, but we know that teaching, and whether we're promoting that teaching or not, we know it. And that is they call it today, what was COINTELPRO yesterday, what was J. Edgar Hoover's Prevent the Black Messiah. Before that, they call it the Black Identity. This guy, Sessions, is calling it the extreme black identity extremists. It's the same program, the same issue. When the World Trade Center came down, that was a way for them to portray all Muslims as being terrorists. And I'm going back to black people being Christian and not going to church.
Well,
I'm not concerned with
You know
with
who's
their,
behind World Trade Center?
well, that I'm not getting. I'm talking about from the
That's another show,
perspective.
right?
I'm talking about from the perspective.
No, but I'm saying that's another
Israeli
show.
Mossad.
I'm saying
Well,
that's another show.
They had a lot to do with it.
Well,
Yeah.
they can't pull that thing off. Look, this is white supremacy, is Aryan supremacy
Yeah, of
also.
course.
Aryan supremacy
always
also.
had to deal
So it had to be a combination of factors.
That's right.
The Mossad just can't come in and lay something out without an alliance. I'm not saying that it happened that way, but you're dealing with people. Okay. Some of the major
Well, you have to realize.
anti-Semitic actions, when I say major, that you see from time to time is the going through the Jewish graveyards and overturning the tombstones. Blacks ain't doing that. And I'm saying that kind of feeling exists in white communities who are non-Jewish. And
the
therefore,
white supremacists, Nazis, Klansmen, and all those.
One and the
sort of
same
people.
family.
They're the ones in Jewish cemeteries turning over tombstones.
one and the same family.
Okay.
If you see them all in a room, Netanyahu, Putin, and
They're white
the Trump, if you saw them in the same room and they didn't have no tags on them, you're dealing with the same man.
The white folks, yeah.
They are the leading supremacists on the planet today. You just named them.
But
Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump.
Listen, if people disappeared tomorrow, the same mindset would be there for us to deal with.
How do we change that one?
Koch is gone. Koch is gone, and
You
he
see
was the big enemy.
Bloomberg turned Democrat
They're the same.
yesterday.
they're-
He registered as
yesterday,
a Democrat.
And great, that means some
and he
black
gave
people.
the Democrats $20 million. So it's going to turn around now.
That means some black people who are Democrats are going to get a payday.
No, we
back-
all get a payday.
I don't know about all that.
All of us.
And when do we do
Just
that?
vote.
Reparations.
Vote on November
We'll get a
6th.
payday.
No,
Okay.
there's some hope. See, I don't want you guys to be too bitter.
Look.
Because there's some hope here.
I ain't supposed to be better. I'm say this. What I'm throwing out on the table as one of the solutions is for black, I'm borrowing off of what Bashir said, is for black folks to begin to go back to their God and bring a belief in a supreme being into their home. At the
Amen.
same time,
Amen.
they have to get all the black colors, all the hidden colors, so that they
Yes,
know
yes.
who God is in
That's it.
terms of what the complexion is of
Right,
that God,
exactly.
and that they have to know that God is in them, God
That's
is
it.
in
There
us.
you go.
And
There
along
you
with
go.
that, last but not least, is start your own independent education schools, whether it's a weekend school,
That's it.
but you got to do it, and you got to
That's
turn
it.
off the TV with the children and the triple screen computers, et cetera. And you got to work, as Bashir said, with your children, reading, writing, and arithmetic. You got to do that. But Dr. Jeffries is around.
Where? You
He's
showed up?
somewhere.
You get,
He's
you
somewhere.
get
So I'm briefing.
25%.
I saw.
Quarter to. Are you here? Speak up. Is he here?
He's not making any, but
Is that you on the phone? You better not show up quarter to 6.
No, we got a glimpse of it.
man.
Did he?
Unless it was a ghost.
All right, bring out his chair. All right, I tell you what, let's go to Gil Noble. We'll come right back to you. Play number 5 for me, please.
All praise to Allah.
Did you get that in the back? Hello? Play number 5.
My first inoculation was Dr. King. And then that led me to Adam Powell and a lot of the people. But I was put off by Malcolm X.
Why?
Because what he was saying and the way he was saying it was too blunt. It was dangerous. And you didn't say those things in those days. I told you, we had been socialized as kids to get around wrong, not to confront it. And Malcolm spoke in very declarative terms, and he said some terrible things about white people that we thought, but you would never express it, you see. He talked about the way this country was not a democracy, but a hypocrisy, and he talked about what had been happening to us down south and up south. And he was not shy. He had and he was very, very intimidating. I'm man enough to admit it. There are a lot of people who are my age who will speak, you know, with love about Malcolm as though it had always been that way. But that's not so. He scared a lot of us to death. And then, mind you, I had this apartment, a bachelor apartment on Convent Avenue, and I'd been having a lot of fun, you know. And here he comes talking about a different way of life. First of all, he dropped his last name. Well, we had been socialized to take great pride in our last name. The more European it sounded, the better. There was not a flinch about, you know, Noble. Oh, that's wonderful. If it wasn't French enough, you'd put an ETT on it, you know, to make it sound more French. And so here's a man who dropped his good last name and replaced it with an X. I thought the man was crazy. And then he talked about discipline. And he talked
Self-discipline?
Self-discipline. He said that we do not believe in drinking. And at the time I would have a taste. And he said that we don't smoke cigarettes with or without a label on them. And I would smoke, you know, with a label.
Yes.
And he said, we don't eat pork. Well, you know, I love me some ribs. And then he said, we don't fornicate.
Yes.
And so psychologically, I said, Malcolm, I'll see you later.
Yes.
You know, and all. But what he was doing in deprecating whiteness, I came to understand later that he was rearranging the balance that we needed, because we had glorified whiteness and deprecated blackness. And so he was tilting, using exaggerated terms, to give us a sense of self and to take whites down a little as they needed to be.
That's my hero. I sit here only because of this man. I mean, I strive to bring out some of that Gil Noble in all of us, how we made strides in life and how we've learned from our mistakes, how we saw Malcolm as we all did, and then the man dies, then he discovers what kind of individual he misunderstood. Now this happens with a lot of black people, right? And we have today with us our senior citizen, my man,
That's
Dr.
right.
Jeffrey, on time as usual.
Almost 82, and I ain't blue.
Yeah?
I'm still kicking it.
So before you pass, I want to give you your props now.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and certainly Gil is such an inspiration. Gil
Yeah,
Noble is such
right.
an inspiration. So whatever we can do to revisit his work
Amen.
and bring it out and discuss it,
Right.
that's more important than us being on these with these little internet things and the cell phone and all this mess that people are trying to deal with for entertainment. Gil was serious. He had a
Right.
commitment to go deep, and so we need to constantly raise his work up. And so I'm glad that you have made that.
Oh, man.
And we've got to get access to his work once again,
Right.
which is a major issue, as I understand.
Yes.
And his approach to Africa, right? Lambe Brath, who brought a lot of these.
Well, Gil got to Egypt because the
Alambe?
African Holy Ghost started working on me, and he was so depressed because ABC would not give him a team. So my mother lived near Gil, and so whenever I went to see my mother, I always went by his house, and I was trying to do some voodoo and whatnot. You coming, brother, you coming. So finally, it wasn't working, so I went in, and his wife said, Len, I'm glad you're here. He's so depressed, even the neighbors see him walking around, look like he's just dipping down, and he was, because ABC should have given him a team. So I said, Gil, you going? Well, our sister, Miss Jenkins, who wanted to go but couldn't go, had paid for a ticket. I said, here's your ticket, brother. You going to us. We took 1,000 people. That was one of the greatest turns of his life. He had never experienced that. And it was so successful, he borrowed other people's equipment. But the next year, he went to ABC and said, I demand a team of people to go to the Nile. And he went back, took his wife, and him and Dr. Ben was walking through the Nile like it was their living room, their kitchen, their bedroom. So we need to bring that work up again so that our people can see what people did, what they had a mission to. There's been an explosion of information about the world, all the scientific information, historical information. This is one of the key books in this era. The Great Awakening has taken place, and we can't let it pass us by without understanding how significant it is for us personally, Africanizing our lives, working with our families, our communities, linking up the African world, Brazil, the Caribbean, North America, Central America, the African continent, Africans in Europe. That's a responsibility that we have been about, and we need to enhance it and keep on moving.
And there's a new film, relatively new film, on Sheikh Anta Diop that's out called Kim Yitu, which, interestingly, I got a copy from Baba Randy Weston.
That's right.
The last, he does the music on it.
This is the translation that Ngemi did.
Ngemi.
I got him money to do it. I tried to do it. I went to Europe to try to do it, but it was just too scientific for me. And then when I came back, we got $15,000, the first grant from the Black United Fund. And that went to set Ngemi on the path of translating it. But there's so much information that we can't let go by. We have to synthesize it and let it nourish these young leaders that are coming. Their problem is not kicking each other in the butt and juking each other. They have to deal with the system of global white supremacy. And we have to be about putting in place a system of African truth and live by that. So I'm so excited that so much is happening right now, that the president of Ghana has come to America and said that we're going to take that 400-year period when Africans were first sold into Virginia, and we're going to make this the year of return, coming back to Africa in all ways that you can. And so there is a strong movement actually taking place today. I'll be here next week and we can talk about it.
Okay.
That's right.
We got a busy
2019,
one.
1619,
We got a busy one.
2019.
2019?
I've got a Akeem. Well, we'll talk about that next week. Well, what was it we're talking about? I had something came to my mind.
Well,
You know, the
Gil's
African-
great work
Right?
and the difficulty of enhancing it and doing what he wanted to do is the same for everybody. Dr. Ben, all of the great works, Francis Cress Welsing, our brother Listerfeld Middleton, who was the southern component of you and Gil and the rest in terms of the media. All of that work, the families crushed it. They were hurt by the fact that these great individuals, men and women, put so much time in the struggle, they neglected their families.
With
So
Dr.
wives
Ben,
and sons and daughters.
Dr. Clark.
Dr. Ben is just an example of everyone. Gil's family got the problem. Malcolm's
that's right.
family
I
had the
forgot
problem.
about that.
Dr.
That's right.
Clark's daughter
That's
tried
right.
to do him in
yeah.
before the court. There is a serious disconnect that we've got to analyze. These brothers were
And
committed to
you-
larger than their blood. They were committed to the
What's happening
divine
to all
nature
this?
of African
What's
peoples.
happening to all these important archives? I mean, you're in charge of a lot of this stuff, aren't
That's
you?
why we set up the Jeffries Foundation to deal with legacy. And so we're
Okay.
working on it. So that's a process that's still taking place.
That's something we seriously need to take a look at, Doc.
Yes.
I mean, you got all this information. We need to get it out.
Well, it's not just me. There were schools of knowledge developed in Atlanta, in Florida, in New Orleans, in St. Louis.
over the place.
All over the place. These people got this information, and we need to show that this is the explosion that has taken place that has allowed us to capture the African
But why
mind.
aren't you concentrating on what's here in America and starting wanting to go back to Africa?
Because America is an accident. America is an accident.
With all the important information we just talked
America is
about,
an
Doc.
accident. You cannot take America and leave it standing there. There's a world. There's a world in Asia. There's a world in South America. There's a world in Black America. That's not America. It's much more than America. So I'm going to have to take you on a retreat, just me and you. And your wife is going to
We
say,
gotta have to be on time. The God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. Maybe
May I-
we'll get Doc here on time one.
May I
one week.
interject that the Million Man March anniversary is this coming Sunday, Muhammad Mosque number 7 in Harlem at 1 o'clock. And Minister Farrakhan will be speaking from Detroit, the Million
Power
Man
to the
March
people.
anniversary.
God bless. Take
power
care.
to African people.
Power to the people. We got another minute for the Bronx.
You sound like Trump. Power to the people. You know, and we know what people he's talking about. We need
power
to see
to
the global
Oh,
African
man.
history.
Yeah, Doc.
Hey, hey.
What Brother Jeffries is talking about for me is we got to read. Wherever we are, we have to read and encourage the reading. And within our families, the 1, 2, and 3 people, families, it's a prophet is not honored in his own home. And that's what black intellectuals, I'm talking about conscious intellectuals, that we experience is freedom. Just in they like not to believe as you, and you're the
Again, power to the people. All people. God bless.
Wakanda forever.
Thank you for the opportunity,
Hey,
brother.
anytime.